Hello friends, Paper Historian here. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel, where we don't just tell stories, we peel back the illusions and show you the lives as they were truly lived. In today's video, we'll talk about the women the world painted in silk and called luxury, but who lived and died in cages disguised as palaces, the Oiran of old Japan. So, settle in, dim the lights, and let the noise of the day fade away. This is a long story, and it is not a gentle one. You are not born to be an ornament, but that is what you are told from the first day you draw breath, though you are far too small to know what breath even is, let alone what people expect from it. You come into the world not as a daughter to be cherished, but as potential debt to be paid, and in a society that weighs the worth of a family in rice, silk, and reputation, a girl child is often a liability disguised as a lullaby. Your father counts mouths and finds yours excessive. Your mother swaddles you not with joy, but with dread, already wondering which house will claim you when the family ledger turns against her. So you grow, not nurtured, but negotiated. By the time you learn to walk, the paths of your feet are already mapped, not by your steps, but by contracts inked between men who will never care what those feet walk through. A brothel owner visits, dressed in silk that looks prosperous until you notice the stains, the smell of incense covering sweat and something sour. He smiles like he's doing your family a favor, but what he's really doing is balancing their hunger against your future. The agreement is simple, though no one bothers to explain it to you. You will be trained, displayed, sold, resold, worked until your youth is gone, and then discarded like a cracked teacup. Unless, of course, you are clever or cruel enough to survive. You do not know the word contract, but you live inside one. They call it miyuke, a formal indenture, a sale disguised as salvation, where a girl as young as 7 can be signed away to a brothel in exchange for a handful of coins or an advance of rice. The brothel gets a body it can shape like clay. Your parents get temporary relief from starvation. You get a future so meticulously arranged, it makes cages look like freedom. You are led away, perhaps crying, perhaps silent, perhaps too confused to even notice that the path you take will not return you home. Your new home is a place where light does not reach, where the air tastes of sweat, cheap perfume, and despair too old to evaporate. They call it a training house, but you will not be taught arithmetic or poetry unless the poetry rhymes with obedience. You will learn posture, bowing, how to pour sake with hands that must never tremble, how to smile with lips that must never refuse, how to hide disgust behind laughter. If you falter, the older girls will correct you, not kindly, but efficiently, because kindness is wasted on livestock, and you are livestock with hairpins. At first, you do not understand. You think you are just being prepared for guests, for visitors, for some kind of performance. You scrub floors, carry trays, fetch water, and sleep on straw mats that smell like mold. You are shouted at for being too slow, slapped for being too clumsy, pinched for looking tired. Your body is trained not to rest, but to anticipate the desires of others. You are told that your value lies not in who you are, but in how convincingly you can stop being yourself. And then the lessons shift. At 10, sometimes earlier, you are introduced to the darker curriculum. The madam, painted, perfumed, terrifying, explains in words that feel too heavy for your small ears that men will come and they will want things, and you must give them what they want, because that is what keeps rice in the pot and lights in the lanterns. You are shown how to paint your face so that your eyes look bigger, how to bite your lips until they redden, how to bow just enough to flatter but not so much that you seem common. It is theatre, they say, but theatre where every missed line can cost you your supper or your skin. Some girls break quickly. They cry until they are beaten silent, or they resist until they are punished into compliance. Some harden, turning their smiles into weapons, learning that survival is easier if you can make a client believe you like him, if you can feign delight while your stomach churns. And some, most, simply fold inward, building a small dark place inside themselves where no hand can reach, no matter how much the outside of them is used. You find out soon which kind you are. You don't get to choose. The brothel chooses for you. When you bleed for the first time, it is not celebrated as a step toward womanhood, but as a signal that your training is complete. You are now useful, which is another way of saying marketable. Your childhood ends the moment it could have begun. You are dressed in brighter kimono, forced to walk the streets as advertisement, paraded as future merchandise in festivals where the clients appraise you the way they appraise horses or lacquerware. Men look at you with hunger, women look at you with pity or contempt. You stop looking at yourself in mirrors. And yet, the irony is that you are still told you are lucky. Lucky to have been chosen by a reputable house, lucky to be trained as an Oiran, one of the high courtesans, instead of being sent straight to the lowest rank of street prostitute who waits in alleys for men too poor to afford walls. Lucky because you might one day wear robes heavy with embroidery, your hair stacked with ornaments like a festival float. Lucky because if you can endure enough pain, enough humiliation, you might be admired from afar as a figure of glamour, even though the glamour is painted over bruises. Lucky because your chains are silk instead of hemp. But you know better. You know because you hear the older girls whisper at night, their voices low, broken, speaking of customers who demand too much, of diseases that rot the body from the inside, of pregnancies hidden until they cannot be, of infants smothered before they can cry. You know because you see the ones who do not endure, who sicken and vanish, whose names are not spoken again. You know because deep inside you feel the gnawing truth, that your life has already been spent, sold before it began, and all that remains is to pay back a debt you never agreed to. And so you grow into adolescence not as a girl, but as an investment. Your smiles are currency, your obedience collateral, your silence profit. The brothel owns your body, your time, your voice, and, if it can manage, your mind. You live in debt so vast it becomes indistinguishable from fate, told that only by serving enough men for enough years can you ever hope to buy back your freedom. A freedom priced so high it may as well be another lie painted in rouge. You sleep, if you can, to the sounds of men laughing and women pretending, to the creak of floorboards and the rattle of coins, to the knowledge that tomorrow will be the same, and the day after too, until you forget that there could be any other kind of tomorrow. And when dawn comes, you rise again, bow again, smile again, because that is what you were sold for, and what you will be sold for until your body collapses, or your debt is miraculously cleared, whichever comes first. And the cruelest part? You are not alone. There are thousands like you, each with a story that looks almost identical, because individuality is the one thing brothels cannot profit from. You are a commodity, a pattern, a repeatable investment. The only unique part of you is how long you last. You learn very quickly that the brothel does not waste time explaining why you are here. It only teaches you how to be here, which is another way of saying it trains you to forget that there was ever a before. You are told to bow until your back aches, to kneel until your knees throb, to smile until the corners of your mouth split, and to never, under any circumstances, speak unless spoken to, unless the words are yes, thank you, or morsak, please. Childhood, as you vaguely remember it, consisted of mud, rice gruel, and your mother's hands. Training, as you now know it, consists of posture, silence, and hands that slap faster than questions can be asked. You are not taught to read. Letters, after all, are dangerous. They open minds, and open minds do not bow well. Instead, your lessons are mechanical. You are taught how to walk, feet pointed inward, steps small and deliberate, as though you are forever approaching a stage. You are taught how to laugh, not the laugh that bubbles up naturally when someone tickles your ribs or when you chase a stray cat in the alley, but the controlled giggle that suggests delight without sincerity, interest without attachment, warmth without heat. You are taught how to listen, nodding at the right times, tilting your head just so, as if your entire body is an exclamation mark to a sentence you didn't ask to hear. The madam reminds you daily that the customer does not pay for honesty. He pays for illusion. And so you learn to rehearse expressions the way actors rehearse lines. Surprise, interest, coyness, all performed in front of a cracked mirror until your own reflection looks less like yourself and more like merchandise waiting to be unwrapped. Discipline is the skeleton that holds the brothel upright. If you falter, punishment comes swiftly, not necessarily because you failed, but because failure reminds everyone else that obedience is not inevitable. A mistake is contagious, and so the cure is pain. Forget to bow low enough, and your back will be corrected with a cane. Spill sake on a guest's robe, and you will spend a night kneeling on rice grains, each kernel embedding its accusation into your skin. Speak too loudly, laugh too sincerely, and you will find yourself locked in a dark closet until sincerity starves into silence. They tell you this is for your own good, that without discipline, you will never rise to the level of Oiran, never wear the robes so heavy they bend your spine, never command the attention of men who see women as both decoration and disposable entertainment. The irony is that the closer you climb to that pedestal, the less freedom you have to stand on it. But as a child being trained, you do not yet see the irony. You only see the older girls, painted and adorned, and you are told to want to be like them. So you want it, even as they whisper warnings when the madam's back is turned. And the training is not just physical, it is psychological warfare disguised as etiquette. You are praised not for being yourself, but for erasing yourself effectively. Good girl, they say, when you suppress a frown. Good girl, when you laugh at a joke you do not understand. Good girl, when you bow so low your forehead touches the floor. Your reward is not freedom, but survival, and survival becomes its own intoxicant, numbing you to the absurdity of it all. Meals are sparse, deliberately so. Hunger sharpens obedience. You are given enough rice to keep you upright, enough miso soup to stop your stomach from protesting too loudly, but never enough to let you feel secure. Full bellies ask questions. Empty ones bow. You learn to hide food when you can, to eat scraps in secret, to thank the madam for generosity that tastes like deprivation. At night, you are not permitted to dream. Dreams are a waste of rest, and rest is a waste of potential. You share mats with other girls, your bodies lined up like dolls in storage, each one smelling of sweat, cheap powder, and fear. The air is thick with whispers. One girl prays softly to a god who never arrives. Another promises herself she will escape, though you both know where escapees end up, dragged back with shaved heads and scars to prove the lesson. Sometimes, when the madam is drunk, she tells stories of girls who made it out, bought their freedom, lived as wives or merchants. But the laughter of the older courtesans afterward tells you what those stories really are. Fairy tales sold to children to keep them docile. The training includes endurance for humiliation. You are forced to kneel in front of guests, not to serve them yet, but to practice being invisible while they talk about politics, poetry, or prostitutes they once knew. You sit there, your legs burning, your back rigid, your eyes lowered, pretending not to hear when they talk about which girl is prettiest, which girl is cheapest, which girl reminds them of their wives, which girl reminds them of their daughters. You are an object in training, learning how to be an object convincingly enough that the men forget there is a person inside. And as you age, 10, 11, 12, you begin to understand what the brothel has always understood, that time is money and your time is running out. Every lesson, every punishment, every fake smile is an investment in the moment when you will be sold, paraded, displayed as something worthy of purchase. The madam looks at you not as a child, but as a ledger entry. Your worth is calculated in how many men will want to buy your company, how much set you can convince them to drink, how much coin you can squeeze out of them without ever appearing greedy. The cruel genius of the system is that it convinces you to measure yourself by the same standards. You begin to compare your face to the others, your figure to the older girls, your laugh to the rehearsed ones that earn coins instead of slaps. You learn to hate your own reflection, not because it is ugly, but because it is insufficiently profitable. You are told to aspire, and so you do, even though the prize is nothing more than a prettier cage. Sometimes, when you're alone, you remember fragments of another life. Your mother's hand brushing your hair, your father's voice raised in drunken anger, the smell of rain on the thatched roof of a house you will never see again. The memories feel like dreams, and you cling to them even as they fade because they remind you that you were once something other than property. But the brothel does not allow such luxuries. You are reminded daily that your family gave you away, that you owe the house everything, that your survival is not a gift, but a debt you must repay in sweat, blood, and silence. And so, little by little, the training succeeds. You stop crying at punishments, you stop asking why, you stop remembering who you were before the ledger claimed you. You become what they need you to be: obedient, practiced, silent, smiling, not a person, but a product, not a child, but an investment, not free, but convincing enough to make others forget you were ever chained. You are told the lessons are over not with ceremony or congratulations, but with the simple act of being dressed differently one morning. The robes are heavier, the powder thicker, the hair ornaments sharper against your scalp. The madam does not call you a child anymore, she calls you a girl ready for debut, though the word, like everything else here, is just another synonym for debt. You don't feel ready. But readiness is not the point. Readiness is never the point. You are a crop harvested too early because time and hunger do not wait for ripeness. Your first client is chosen not by you, but by coin. He is older, of course. They almost always are. His skin hangs loose around his neck. His breath smells of sake and salted fish. His hands are too soft for someone who works and too eager for someone who prays. He looks at you not as a person, but as a prize he's already bought. You kneel, you bow, you smile because that is what you've been trained to do. Inside, your stomach clenches, your skin prickles, your heart hammers so hard you're sure he can hear it. But he cannot. Men like him only hear themselves. The first touch is the hardest, not because it hurts, though it does, but because it tears through the fragile membrane of your training. All the bows, the laughter, the lessons in etiquette, they crumble when his hand closes around your wrist and reminds you that you are not performing. You are surviving. Pain follows, humiliation follows, a kind of dissociation follows, where you are watching yourself from outside your body, a girl in painted robes doing what she must to repay a debt she never agreed to. When it is over, he leaves satisfied, and you are left staring at the walls of a room that suddenly feels like a tomb. You feel filthy, not just in body, but in spirit. And when you try to wash yourself, the water does not take it away. You scrub until your skin burns, and still you cannot erase the imprint of him. You realize then that the madam was right about one thing: survival requires forgetting. You will not survive if you carry each client with you. You will break, so you learn to forget. Or rather, you learn to pretend forgetting, to file each encounter away into the same locked drawer where you keep your childhood, your mother's voice, your dreams. And yet, you cannot forget the first time entirely. It lingers in flashes: the sound of his laugh, the weight of his body, the way the candlelight made his shadow loom larger than his presence. It lingers because it broke something that can never be mended. You are no longer a trainee. You are now a commodity in use. The clients keep coming. Some are rough, some are gentle, some are indifferent. The gentle ones can be worse because they trick you into thinking there might be kindness here, only to remind you that kindness is another form of purchase. The rough ones at least are honest about their cruelty. The indifferent ones are the most common. Men who treat you like furniture, who use you with the same attention they give to drinking tea or scratching their heads. You learn that you are not hated, not loved, not desired. You are consumed like a meal, like smoke, like sake, and then forgotten. The madam tells you to be grateful. Each client is another coin toward your debt, another step toward the impossible freedom she dangles in front of you like a carrot before a mule. You nod. You thank her. But in the quiet of your mind, you calculate how much debt remains, and you understand that the numbers are arranged to never add up. You're running on a treadmill, and the finish line is a lie. Your body begins to change, not naturally, but violently, under the demands placed upon it. You ache in places you didn't know could ache. You bleed too often or not at all. Your stomach twists from bad food, bad drink, bad nights. Some mornings you cannot stand without pain shooting through you. The older girls tell you to get used to it. They hand you powders to numb the ache, roots to dull the cramps, charms to ward off disease. Some of it helps, most of it doesn't, but you swallow it anyway because you cannot afford to stop working. Work is survival, and survival is all that is left. The psychological toll is worse than the physical. At first, you flinch with every touch, every whisper, every command. Over time, you stop flinching, not because it hurts less, but because your mind builds walls higher than the brothel itself. You learn to float above yourself, to let your body perform while your mind drifts elsewhere, back to your childhood home, back to an imaginary meadow, back to anywhere that is not here. Dissociation becomes your secret religion, and forgetting becomes your prayer. Some girls harden instead. They mock the clients behind their backs, they learn tricks to squeeze more money out of them, they laugh louder than the humiliation. They become cynical, sharp, calculating. You admire them sometimes, envy them even, but you cannot be them. You are too soft, too haunted, too aware of the cracks in your facade, and yet you keep going, because the brothel has no room for broken dolls. The broken ones are discarded, and you are not ready to be discarded. Every once in a while, you hear of a girl who managed to find love in this place, who convinced a client to buy her freedom and marry her. These stories spread like ghost tales, whispered at night as if they might be true. But deep down you know they are lies, or at best exceptions so rare they might as well be miracles. For every one girl who escapes through marriage, 100 more rot in silence. You stop believing in miracles. You start believing in endurance. The madam praises you when clients return, when they request you by name, when they spend extra coin on you. She tells you that you are rising, that you are becoming valuable, that you might one day be an Oiran with your own attendants and privileges, but you know what privileges mean here. More layers of paint, heavier robes, richer clients who demand more for their money. Prestige is just a more expensive kind of prison. You try not to think about the future. You try to survive each day as it comes, each client as he leaves, each night as it ends. But sometimes, when you are lying awake in the dark, listening to the sounds of laughter and weeping mixing in the corridors, you wonder if you will ever feel clean again, if you will ever feel whole again, if you will ever feel anything again. And the silence that answers you is heavier than any robe, thicker than any makeup, more suffocating than any man. And so you continue, because you must, because the world has decreed it, because forgetting is the only skill you have truly mastered. You serve, you smile, you survive. And each day, a little more of you disappears into the lacquered mask you have been forced to wear, until you are no longer sure if the mask is hiding you or if you were the mask all along. You learn quickly that the painted glamour of an Oiran is not meant to hide beauty, but to disguise rot. The silk, the ornaments, the elaborate rituals, they are armor against a reality so unsanitary, so physically degrading, that if it was stripped bare, even the drunkest client would recoil. You are told to bathe, but not for yourself. Baths are for appearance, for keeping the illusion of cleanliness alive in the mind of a man who does not care where you have been so long as you look polished when he arrives. The water is tepid, shared, sometimes muddied with the residue of the girl who bathed before you. Soap is rare, perfumed powders more common, because scent does what soap cannot. It distracts. Your body becomes a battlefield between hygiene and necessity, and hygiene loses almost every time. You wash when told, not when needed. You scrub when a wealthy client is expected, not when you feel dirty. The constant painting and repainting of your face clogs your skin until it itches and oozes beneath the mask. Hair ornaments conceal lice. Perfume conceals sweat. Rice powder conceals sores. Everything is concealed, nothing is cured. The brothel keeps herbs in stock, not for your health, but for business continuity. You are given potions to dull the risk of pregnancy, bitter concoctions that burn your throat and leave your stomach twisted. Some are made of pennyroyal, others of mercury compounds, still others of combinations so secret the madam herself cannot say what's inside. You drink them because refusal is not an option. You drink them even when they make you vomit, even when they make your skin pale, even when they make your blood thin. Better to risk poison than to risk a child, because a child is not a blessing here. It is a catastrophe. If pregnancy comes anyway, the solutions are brutal. You see girls disappear for weeks, returning gaunt and hollow-eyed, their bodies stitched back together poorly, their souls left in whatever alley or room the procedure happened. Some do not return at all. The madam whispers excuses, illness, family matters, transfer to another house. You know better. You hear the muffled screams through thin walls. You see the stains on sheets burned in the back alley. The truth is not hidden. It is ignored. The clients know this too, though they pretend otherwise. They whisper crude jokes about girls who swelled too soon or couldn't keep their rice water down. They laugh as if life and death were drinking games. You learn not to react. You learn that survival depends on swallowing not just the potions, but also the bile that rises in your throat when you hear such things. And then there are the diseases. They creep in like unwelcome guests, staying long after the men who carried them have gone. Syphilis, gonorrhea, endless infections that warp your body from the inside out. The madam insists on remedies. Mercury rubs that sear your skin, herbal compresses that smell like rot, powders that do nothing but make you cough. You see girls lose their teeth, their hair, their minds. You see rashes bloom into ulcers, fevers burn into madness. You see yourself in them, a glimpse of what awaits if luck abandons you. Sometimes the girls try to protect each other. They whisper about washing with vinegar, about boiling cloths, about keeping to certain rituals between clients. But rituals are no match for commerce. Men come sick and leave sicker, and you, the merchandise, are expected to endure. If you fall ill, you are given a few days to recover. If you do not, you are replaced. The brothel does not mourn, it invests. And still, the illusion persists. Clients walk in expecting painted dolls, and dolls they receive. You learn to mask sores with thicker powder, to hide weakness behind stronger bows, to choke down herbs that make your insides scream, but your belly stay flat. You smile with cracked lips, laugh with rotting teeth, kneel with joints swollen from infection. You become a master of disguise, but not the glamorous kind sung about in stories, the kind that keeps you alive while you are falling apart. And all the while, you think about how little of your body truly belongs to you. Your skin is owned by paint, your stomach by herbs, your blood by disease, your womb by fear. You are a tenant in a body that has been leased out to men who never bother to learn your name. The irony is almost funny, if you had the strength to laugh. The older girls warn you that this is only the beginning. They show you their scars, the ones hidden under silk, the ones that never heal. They tell you that by 20, most courtesans are already fading. By 30, they are relics, if they live that long. You ask them what happens after. They shrug. Some vanish into temples, some beg in the streets, some marry men too poor or too drunk to know better. A few, very few, buy their way out, though the cost is so high it might as well be a myth. The rest die in beds that were never theirs, surrounded not by family, but by debt. And yet, despite everything, the business thrives. The brothel profits, the madam smiles, the clients keep coming. You are a product in a machine that does not break down, no matter how many of its parts collapse. And you understand, deep in the pit of your gut, that your life is not measured in years or even in days, but in how many more men your body can endure before it gives out entirely. So you endure, because what else is there? You take the herbs, you paint the sores, you smile with the lips that taste of poison. You survive not because you want to, but because the house demands it. And each night, as you scrub your skin raw in water that never runs clear, you wonder how many layers you will have to shed before you find the person underneath, if she even exists anymore. You learn very early that the brothel is not a place for children, except in the sense that it eats them. Girls arrive as children, they leave as shadows, and if, by some cruel twist of fate, a child happens to be conceived inside these walls, it is treated not as a miracle, but as an inconvenience, a mistake, an error in bookkeeping. You hear the older girls whisper warnings before you even understand them, murmuring that nothing ruins a woman faster than a swelling belly, and nothing makes a madam angrier than a worker who cannot work. Pregnancy, when it comes, is not announced with joy, it is discovered like contraband. A missed cycle, a change in appetite, a body that refuses to obey the herbs and poisons forced down your throat. At first you deny it, because denial is easier than acceptance. Then the madam notices, and denial is no longer an option. Her eyes are cold, her voice sharper than the hairpin she wears, and she asks you not how you feel, but how you could be so careless. Careless as though conception were a choice you were allowed to make. The remedies begin immediately. Brewed teas so bitter they strip the lining of your throat, powders mixed into your rice that taste of metal and despair, concoctions whispered about in alleys and passed hand to hand like dangerous secrets. Some of them work, in the cruel sense that they end what was beginning. Some of them fail, in the crueler sense that they half work, leaving the mother fevered, bleeding, torn between life and death while the brothel calculates whether she is still worth keeping alive. You learn that here, survival is a coin toss, and the coin is weighted against you. If the pregnancy persists despite everything, the options are few and none of them merciful. The brothel has its contacts, midwives who specialize not in bringing life into the world, but in forcing it out. You hear the stories, girls held down while instruments scrape and tear, their cries muffled by cloths, their bodies left to heal, or not, in the back rooms. Infection is common, death more so. The madame calls it housekeeping, as if blood and screams were simply another part of running a business. And yet, sometimes, impossibly, a child is born. The air of the brothel changes when it happens, not with celebration, but with discomfort, as though the very walls resent the intrusion of innocence. A baby's cry is not welcome here. It is an unwelcome reminder of what was stolen from all of you. The mother, exhausted, broken, looks at the child with a mixture of awe and terror, because she knows what comes next. Children of courtesans are rarely kept. They are often sold, handed off to temples, abandoned at the steps of shrines, or taken by distant relatives if such relatives can be bribed. Some are raised in the brothel itself, little ghosts running through the corridors until they are old enough to be absorbed into the cycle. You look at them and wonder if they will remember their mothers, or if the brothel will train them so thoroughly that memory itself becomes a luxury they cannot afford. The clients, of course, want nothing to do with children. They laugh at the idea, some joke cruelly about whether a baby might be theirs, but the responsibility is always denied, deflected, dismissed. A courtesan's child belongs to no one, and in belonging to no one, it belongs to the system that produced it, a product of exploitation destined either to be discarded or recycled. The women cope in different ways. Some distance themselves from their children immediately, refusing to bond, pretending the baby is just another part of the brothel's furniture that will soon be removed. Others cling desperately, fighting for every stolen moment, every touch, every chance to believe that they are still human, still capable of love. The latter rarely fare well. Attachment is dangerous in a place designed to erase it. The madam sees love as weakness and weakness as debt. You hear the statistics whispered, though no one dares write them down. Most girls do not survive more than a handful of pregnancies, and most children do not survive more than a handful of years. The herbs poison them. The poverty stunts them. The shame silences them. A rare few make it out, raised in temples or adopted into families desperate for labour, but the majority vanish, their lives extinguished as quietly as they began. The irony is sharp enough to cut you. In a society obsessed with lineage, with duty to family, with the continuation of bloodlines, here you are, producing lives no one wants, lives treated as stains instead of legacies. The contradiction gnaws at you, but you cannot speak it aloud. You bow, you nod, you continue. The cruelest part is not the death, not the abandonment, but the normalization. You find yourself growing numb to it. Another girl swells, another girl disappears, another infant is carried out in a bundle and never returns. The first time, it horrified you. The 10th time, it feels like routine. You hate yourself for it, but numbness is survival, and survival is the only currency left to you. And yet, deep inside, a part of you refuses to forget. You remember the cries of the babies, the hollow look in their mother's eyes, the way the madam sighed as though this were just another expense to balance. You carry those memories like hidden scars, invisible to the clients who buy your smile, invisible to the madam who buys your obedience, but carved deep into the marrow of who you are. And so you endure, because endurance is all that's left. You drink the herbs, you hide the swelling, you say nothing when another girl vanishes. You survive each pregnancy scare the way you survive each client, by pretending it never happened. But you know, in the quiet of your heart, that every erased child, every silenced cry, every discarded life adds up to a weight no powder or perfume can conceal. And you wonder how many more you will carry before you collapse under it. You begin to understand that your life is not measured in years or even in bodies endured, but in coins that never seem to stay in your hands. Every moment in the brothel is debt. Debt for the robes you wear, for the rice you eat, for the paints that crack your face, for the roof that leaks but still counts as shelter. From the day you arrive, you are told you owe, and from that day forward, every breath you take is an installment on a loan that will never be repaid. The madam explains it simply, as if you were a child too foolish to grasp the brilliance of her system. You were bought, which means you cost money, and now you must earn it back. What she does not say, because she doesn't need to, is that the price she names will shift like a mirage every time you think you're close. Interest is the word in modern accounting. In the brothel, it is simply called survival. Your clothes are not gifts, they are investments, and you pay for every thread with your body. The paints and powders, meant to disguise sores and exhaustion, are not expenses the brothel swallows. They are tallied carefully, added to your account, as though every swipe of rice powder is another coin extracted from your non-existent savings. Even the food you eat, thin gruel or stale rice, is marked down. You are never allowed to forget that nothing here is free, least of all you. And then there is the buyout, the fantasy whispered at night, half lullaby and half taunt. You hear older girls tell stories of courtesans who bought their freedom, who saved enough coin or convinced some foolish client to pay the sum. The numbers vary wildly, and that is part of the cruelty. Sometimes it is said to be 3 years' wages, sometimes 10, sometimes more than a lifetime could ever yield. The madam controls the number the way she controls everything, arbitrarily, absolutely, and always in her favour. The cruel joke is that you do earn money, technically. Coins pass from client to madam, from madam to ledger, and in the ledger there is a line with your name on it. But the money never reaches your hands. It is eaten up by expenses, robes, paints, food, medicines, herbs, even the candles that burn while you are used. You are told you are working toward freedom, But in truth, you're running in circles, like a rat in a wheel that feeds the house while exhausting itself. Sometimes men promise you freedom. A wealthy merchant, drunk on his own generosity, declares that he will buy you out, that he will make you his mistress, that he will rescue you from this place. You smile because that is what you have been trained to do, but inside you do not believe it. You have seen too many girls cling to such promises, only to be discarded the moment the coin purse closed. Freedom in this world is not a gift, it is a transaction, and transactions rarely end in your favor. There are exceptions, of course. You hear of a girl who was bought by a samurai, another who caught the eye of a daimyo's retainer, another who married a wealthy client after he paid her debt. But these stories are like ghost tales, rare, embellished, repeated because they are extraordinary, not because they are common. For every one girl who escapes through purchase, 100 more die in debt, their bodies worn out long before the numbers in the ledger reach zero. The system is designed this way. You see it clearly, though you are not supposed to. If the debts were truly payable, if the buyouts were truly attainable, the brothel would bleed workers faster than it could replace them. The illusion of freedom must exist, but only as an illusion, like a carrot dangled before a mule. You are meant to believe it is possible, to work harder, to endure more, to hope just enough to keep from collapsing, but the finish line will always move, and you will always remain a step behind. Even when a client does pay a portion toward your debt, the madame finds ways to inflate the remainder. She claims interest has accrued, or that your robes must be upgraded to suit your new status, or that your food has become more expensive. The math is always her math, and you are not allowed to question it. Numbers in the ledger are like laws in the brothel, arbitrary, absolute, and enforced with a whip. And so you live in a paradox. You are told you are valuable, that men desire you, that your services bring wealth to the house, but at the same time, you are told you are worthless without the house, that you are indebted beyond hope, that you cannot survive outside these walls. The contradiction is deliberate. It keeps you bound, not by ropes, but by despair. Sometimes you imagine what freedom would look like. You picture yourself walking away from the brothel, robes discarded, hair ornaments removed, face bare of paint. You picture yourself working as a washerwoman, a servant, anything that lets you keep your body to yourself. But then you remember the numbers, the impossible sum the madam names, and you laugh. Not a happy laugh, but the dry, cracked sound of someone who knows the game is rigged. And then there is the darker truth. Even if you were free, where would you go? The outside world does not welcome women like you. You would carry the mark of the brothel on your skin, your reputation, your very existence. No respectable family would take you in, no decent marriage would accept you. Freedom, even if attained, is often just another prison, only lonelier. The brothel thrives on this cycle. It fattens itself on your labor, grows rich on your ruin, and convinces you that the only path out is the one that winds back inside. You understand finally that your debt is not financial. It is existential. You owe not money, but life itself, and life cannot be repaid. And so you keep working, not because you believe in the ledger, not because you believe in the buyout, but because the alternative is unthinkable. You endure the clients, the paints, the poisons, the endless calculations of numbers that never add up. You endure because endurance is all that is left. And because even in this rigged game, a part of you still clings to the faint, irrational hope that maybe, just maybe, one day the mirage of freedom will stop moving. You discover, over time, that the brothel is not merely a house of transactions, but a theatre, and every theatre requires an audience. Outside, the people who pass by glance up at the lattice windows, glance down at their sandals, pretend not to see. They know what happens here, everyone knows. But the polite fiction is that the brothel is a necessary evil, a kind of civic sewer that swallows up desire so it doesn't leak into the streets. You and the other girls are not people in this equation. You are drains, receptacles, masks behind which the town can preserve its illusion of cleanliness. To the respectable wives and mothers, you are both pitied and despised. They mutter about your shame, they wag fingers, they warn their daughters never to become you, as though you had chosen this path with the same ease one chooses a robe. And yet, their husbands and sons disappear through the brothel gates, leaving coins behind, leaving you with their sweat and their lies, leaving them with excuses about late work or sudden errands. The women despise you because they must, because it allows them to maintain the illusion that their lives are different, that the wall-dividing wife and courtesan is made of stone and not thin paper. The men outside treat you with a kind of double vision. By day they sneer, they avert their gaze, they call you impure. By night they queue up like pilgrims waiting for temple blessings, clutching coins as though they were offerings to gods they do not believe in. Your pollution in public, fantasy in private, condemned and desired in the same breath. The hypocrisy is not hidden, it is celebrated, an open secret that everyone pretends to keep. And then there are the samurai, the officials, the merchants with power. To them, you are status, not sin. Entering the brothel with an Oiran on one's arm is a performance of wealth, a declaration of superiority. They do not see you as a woman, but as a trophy, a feather in their cap, proof that they have coins to waste and appetites to flaunt. They boast about which courtesan they favour, comparing you as though you were horses at a market. You listen to them argue, laugh, spit sake across lacquered tables, and you smile, because your smile is what they paid for. Inside the brothel, the picture is no kinder. The madam treats you not as a daughter or even as a servant, but as capital. She invests in your silks, your paints, your education in songs and poetry, not because she cares about you, but because you are an asset, and assets must be polished. You are property that can talk back, though you quickly learn not to. Even among yourselves, the hierarchy persists. The higher-ranked courtesans, the ones called Oiran, float above the younger, cheaper girls, adorned in heavier silks, walking in elaborate processions that draw crowds outside. To the public, they are the height of glamour. To you, living behind the curtain, they are simply older versions of yourself, worn thinner, painted thicker, trapped in gilded cages instead of bare ones. The younger girls envy them. You do not. You see the cracks beneath the powder, the exhaustion beneath the performance, the despair behind the smiles. Sometimes the public is invited in for festivals or processions. The Oiran Doshu, the grand parade of courtesans, turns the streets into a stage. You watch as crowds gather, as children stare wide-eyed, as merchants elbow each other for a better view. The courtesan walks in impossibly high sandals, her attendants fussing around her, her robe heavy enough to crush her spine. To the crowd, it is dazzling. To her, it is torture, disguised as ceremony. You understand, watching her shuffle step by agonizing step, that the spectacle is not for her, but for them, and that every eye in the crowd is complicit in her suffering. The paradox is sharp. Society condemns you while consuming you, despises you while depending on you. You are the outlet for their vices, the scapegoat for their moralizing, the excuse for their hypocrisy. And in return, you are given nothing but contempt, whispered insults, and the occasional coin tossed like alms to a beggar. The cruelest part is how internalized it becomes. You hear younger girls begin to call themselves impure, to believe they deserve nothing better, to laugh at jokes that slice them open. You watch them rehearse society's hatred until it becomes their own. You do it too some days because self-contempt is easier than rebellion and safer. But in the quiet of your mind, you know the truth. You know that the brothel survives not because of what you are, but because of what society makes you. Because it needs its drains, its scapegoats, its painted illusions. You are both indispensable and disposable, honoured and degraded, necessary and reviled. And you wonder, sometimes, if that is not the most accurate reflection of society itself. You start to notice that the house has two faces, the painted, perfumed one shown to the clients, and the other, the one you live in every day, made of coughs that never end, fevers that come and go like unwelcome visitors, bones that creak far too early, and bodies that collapse in corners before they ever reach 30. Nobody says it outright, but you understand that your time here is not long, not in years, not in health, not in anything but exhaustion. Disease stalks the brothel like a shadow that never leaves. It slips in with the clients, who arrive drunk, sweating, boasting of their conquests, while carrying infections they never acknowledge. It spreads silently, invisibly, until one day a girl is gone, her futon empty, her name erased from the madam's lips. You ask no questions, because questions don't bring back the dead and only paint targets on the living. Venereal disease is everywhere. Syphilis blooms like a cruel flower, beginning with rashes and sores that can be hidden under layers of powder, but ending in madness that cannot. You watch older girls laugh too loud, cry too easily, forget names they once knew. At first, you think they are just tired, but then you see the tremors, the strange gazes, the way their bodies wither while their minds unravel. The madame calls it bad luck. You know it's a sentence handed down not by the gods, but by the men who keep returning, bringing with them the death they pretend doesn't exist. There are treatments, if you can call them that. Mercury, rubbed into sores, swallowed in foul concoctions, burned into skin until it blisters. It doesn't heal, it poisons. Girls lose their teeth, their hair, their sanity, but not the disease. You wonder sometimes if the cure is worse than the sickness, but you never voice it, because in here, silence is safer than truth. And then there are the fevers, the endless colds that never seem to leave. Tuberculosis runs rampant, carried on the damp air, thriving in rooms where too many breathe too close together. You lie awake at night, listening to the coughs, counting them, marking in your mind which are getting worse, which are nearing the point of no return. When one girl stops coughing altogether, you know she's gone. The house doesn't mourn, it replaces. Childbirth kills too. Despite all the herbs, the potions, the brutal attempts at abortion, sometimes pregnancies slip through, and with them comes the inevitable risk. You've seen it. A girl screaming through the night, blood soaking the mats, the midwife muttering prayers while working with hands that shake. If the child survives, it's taken away. If the mother survives, she returns to work within weeks. More often, neither survives. Infections thrive in wounds the body never gets time to heal. Every cut, every sore, every ulcer is a doorway for death. You keep working through the pain because resting is not allowed, and because you know too well that a sick courtesan earns no money, and a courtesan who earns no money is worth less than nothing. You cover your sores with powder, you hide your limp with forced grace, you smile through the pain until your smile becomes a grimace no one notices anymore. Most girls do not live long enough to grow old. 30 is ancient here, 40 a miracle, 50 a myth whispered to make the young believe survival is possible. You sometimes imagine yourself at 50, hair silver, hands steady, sitting in a quiet room with no paint, no clients, no debt. The thought feels like fantasy, a bedtime story told to a child who cannot sleep. The truth is harsher. You will likely not make it that far. Few ever do. The house itself contributes to the slow killing. The air is stale, heavy with smoke and perfume. The futons are rarely cleaned, crawling with lice and fleas. The water is shared, reused, breeding infections as easily as it washes away powder. Even your meals, thin and poor, do little to strengthen you, leaving your body weak, more vulnerable each season. Survival here is not a given. It is an accident. And you wonder sometimes if it's even worth it. And yet, despite all this, the brothel thrives. The clients keep coming. The coins keep clinking. The madam keeps smiling. You watch girl after girl fade, rot, disappear, and still the gates open each night as though nothing has happened. It is not sickness that shocks you anymore, it is how easily it is ignored. The cruelest part is how quickly you begin to normalize it. At first, each death is a wound, each girl lost is a tragedy. But after a while, it becomes routine. Another futon empty, another name unspoken, another story ended without ceremony. You stop asking how, you stop counting why. You survive by looking away, by pretending that you are different, that somehow you will escape the fate written into the very walls of this place. But late at night, when the coughs echo and the fever sweat chills your skin, you know the truth. You are not different. You are just next. They tell stories sometimes, usually whispered in the dark after the lamps have burned low. Stories about women who lived long enough to see their hair turn grey, women who walked out of the brothel alive, with coins in their sleeves or a benefactor at their side. You listen, the way a starving man listens to tales of banquets, half believing, half mocking, because you know how rare such endings are. And yet, there is something in you that clings to those whispers, because if you don't, you're left with nothing but the certainty of an early grave. To live long in this trade is not just difficult, it is almost an act of defiance. The odds are stacked like bricks in a wall you are meant to run into until you break. Disease, violence, pregnancies, debt, despair. But sometimes a woman endures. She survives the infections, dodges the worst of the pregnancies, convinces her body to keep moving even when every joint aches. She lasts not because the system allows it, but because she cheats it, inch by inch, year by year. And what does survival look like? Not freedom, not glory, not the soft landing the tales would have you believe. Survival means working until the body can no longer be painted into a semblance of beauty, until clients turn their eyes to younger flesh, until the madam sighs and declares that you no longer earn enough to justify your futon. By then, you are not old in the world outside, perhaps 35, perhaps 40, but inside these walls you are ancient, a relic, something clients joke about and madams try to hide. If you are lucky, you are allowed to stay, pushed into the shadows, given work as a cleaner, a cook, a minder of younger girls. You sweep the floors you once walked in silks, you heat the water you once bathed in. You whisper advice to children who will not listen because they still believe they are different. You fade, but you fade within the only home you've ever known, which is both comfort and prison. If you are less lucky, you are thrown out. No money, no family, no husband, no skills beyond those the brothel demanded. You stand in the street with painted hands that can no longer charm, with lungs that cough too often, with eyes that know too much. Where do you go? To temples sometimes, begging for charity. To relatives, if any remain, though most will not take you back. Some sell cheap trinkets, some wash laundry until their hands split open, some drift into the alleys and vanish, their stories ending in silence. There are a rare few, so rare you count them like shooting stars, who secure their freedom through buyout. Perhaps they had a client who paid the price. Perhaps they saved enough coins through sheer cunning, hiding small amounts over decades. They leave, sometimes to marry, sometimes to open small shops, sometimes to simply wander far enough that no one knows their name. But even they are not free of the past. You cannot scrub away years of degradation with soap or sake. The brothel clings, a shadow on the skin, a whisper in the ears of those who learn your history. Respectability does not return. It never does. And what of the myth of the wise old courtesan, the woman who survives to become a teacher, a mentor, a matriarch of her craft? It exists, but like all myths, it hides more than it reveals. Yes, some older women teach the younger, showing them tricks to please clients, herbs to numb pain, words to soften cruelty. But they are not respected, not revered. They are tools, used until they break, tolerated until they die. Their wisdom is born of wounds, and the house takes it without thanks. The truth, The one whispered only when the doors are locked and no clients are near is that most women here do not dream of old age. They dream of escape, of miracles, of deaths quick enough to spare them the long fade. Old age is not a blessing, it is another punishment. To live long enough to remember everything, to carry decades of pain without the distraction of youth's illusions, is its own cruelty. Still, when you hear the tales, you cannot help but imagine. You picture yourself with grey hair, sitting on a porch far from the red light district, watching children who are not forced into chains, sipping tea you bought with your own money. You picture yourself as more than survival, as a person, a woman, a human being. You know it is unlikely, you know it is fantasy, but you hold on to it anyway, because hope, no matter how irrational, is the last thing the brothel cannot steal. And sometimes, in the smallest cracks of fate, a woman really does get there. You hear of one who opened a tea house, living to 60, another who became a nun, shaving her head and disappearing into prayers, another who vanished into the countryside, no one knowing where she went or how she ended. These are not common, but they are possible, and possibility is enough to keep you breathing when everything else tells you to stop. In the end, old age in this world is not measured in years, but in defiance. Every day, lived beyond expectation, is a rebellion. Every wrinkle earned is a victory. Every breath past 30 is proof that the system, cruel as it is, does not win every time. You learn early that the brothel's beauty is a kind of violence, a slow poison dressed in silk and powder. Cleanliness is not health here, it is theatre, and you perform it daily with tools that strip your body more than they protect it. To the outside world, you must appear flawless, skin pale and smooth, hair black and shining, teeth hidden behind painted lips. Inside, you know the truth. Each layer of paint is another lie, each comb stroke another wound, each scent another way of masking rot. Bathing is not the daily ritual the clients imagine. Water is scarce, and when it comes, it is cold, shared, and reused, until it smells less like purification and more like a swamp. You sit in the tub while another girl scrubs your back, both of you pretending the water is not cloudy with the dirt of those who came before. Soap is a luxury, rough on the skin, often replaced with rice bran or ashes. The result is not cleanliness but abrasion, leaving you raw beneath the powder you will apply the next morning. Your hair, your greatest advertisement, is an endless chore. Oiran hairstyles are monuments of lacquer and pins, elaborate constructions that require hours of pulling, teasing, oiling, and binding. You do not wash it often. You cannot, not without destroying the shape. Instead, you coat it with camellia oil, heavy and sweet, until it shines like polished wood. The oil clings to your scalp, trapping sweat and lice. You learn to endure the itching, to smile as clients praise your silken hair, while inside you feel the crawling of insects you cannot chase away. The face, your mask, your prison, requires the most work. Each morning, your skin is covered in oshiroi, the white lead powder that gives you the ghostly pallor men find so alluring. You know it burns, stings, clogs your pores. You see the sores it leaves on the faces of older girls, the cracks that widen into scars. Still, you apply it, because without it, you are invisible, and invisibility does not pay debts. Red cinnabar for the lips, charcoal for the eyebrows, rouge made from safflower for the cheeks. All toxic in doses that build slowly, invisibly, until your body fails without explanation. You call it beauty. The physicians who never come would call it poisoning. Perfume hides what water cannot wash away. Sachets of incense are tucked into robes. Powders are dusted across the skin. Clothes are smoked over burning wood to absorb sweetness. It does not cleanse, it disguises, covering sweat, blood, and sickness with the illusion of freshness. Men lean in close, breathing in the perfume, never realizing, or never caring, that beneath it lies rot. For contraception, if you can call it that, you rely on desperate measures. The madam gives you herbal brews, mugwort, pennyroyal, bitter concoctions that twist your stomach and make your blood run irregular. Sometimes they work, often they do not. Other methods are crueler. Vinegar douches, sponges soaked in substances that burn, crude devices made of cloth and desperation. None are reliable, all are painful. You swallow, you insert, you pray, not to the gods, but to chance. When pregnancies come anyway, they are handled with herbs stronger still. Decoctions of safflower, of mercury-laced powders, of roots dug by women who whisper prayers as they grind them. They are meant to expel life before it begins, and often they do, but they take the mother with them just as often. You have seen girls bleed for days, pale as ghosts, trembling as they return to the futon, expected to smile for the next client. Teeth, too, are part of the performance. You blacken them with iron filings and vinegar, the custom of ohaguro, a sign of maturity and allure. It stinks, it corrodes, it rots the enamel. Men call it beautiful. You call it another way the brothel erases you from yourself. Hands and feet are ignored until they fail. You walk endlessly, kneel endlessly, perform endlessly, and your joints ache long before your years. The brothel does not heal you, it paints you. Sprains are bound tightly so you can keep moving. Broken bones are set poorly, leaving you twisted. Clients never notice, and that is the point. You look in the mirror sometimes, one of the cheap ones with warped glass that reflects a stranger back at you. The white mask stares, lips painted like blood, hair stiff with oil, teeth blackened, robes heavy. Beneath it all, you see the sores, the cracks, the swelling. You wonder which part is you and which part is the brothel's creation. After a while, you stop asking, because it doesn't matter. And the cruelest irony, all this suffering is for glamour that fades quickly. The powders eat your skin, the oils eat your scalp, the herbs eat your womb. By the time you are 25, 30 at most, your body is failing, your beauty cracking. The mask slips, and when it does, you are discarded, another broken doll replaced by a fresher face. The brothel sells beauty, but what it truly sells is decay, painted over just long enough to be profitable. You are both the product and the casualty, consumed by the very tools meant to preserve you. You come to understand, with a kind of exhausted clarity, that the brothel is not merely a building, but a revolving door of men, each carrying his own shadow, and each convinced that his shadow entitles him to yours. They come in endless variety. Samurai, merchants, clerks, farmers who scrape together coins for months just to prove they could, travelling monks who talk of purity by day and spill sake on your robes by night. They are different only in their costumes. The hunger in their eyes is always the same. The samurai arrive with swagger, their swords clinking, their words sharper than the steel they carry. They pretend refinement, quoting poems, discussing politics, boasting of battles won. But after the sake flows and the doors close, they are just men, petty, greedy, desperate for someone to remind them that power extends beyond the battlefield. Some demand deference, insist that you bow, call them lord or master, though in truth they are only half-drunk soldiers, paid too little and worshipped too much. When their tempers flare, their swords are nearby, and you learn to read their moods the way sailors read storms, adjusting your smile, your words, your body to keep the blade sheathed. Merchants bring another kind of arrogance. They have no swords, but they have coins, and coins cut deeper than steel in this house. They boast of their ships, their warehouses, their imports from China or Nagasaki, and they spend lavishly, not out of generosity, but out of the need to be seen spending. To buy the company of an Oiran is to buy reputation, to display wealth like a banner, to make rivals seethe with envy. They stuff your sleeves with trinkets, promise gifts they rarely deliver, laugh too loudly, spit food on the mats. They do not treat you as a person, nor even as a woman, but as a stage upon which their pride performs. Then there are the townsmen, the shopkeepers, the artisans. They come less frequently, But when they do, they arrive with the intensity of those who know they should not be here. They handle you roughly, as though determined to extract every coin's worth of pleasure, as though terrified of wasting what little they can afford. Some are kind, nervous, hesitant, their hands shaking as they touch you. Others are cruel, compensating for their smallness with violence. You cannot predict which kind you will meet until the door closes. Farmers are rarer still, but they come, sometimes during festivals, sometimes after selling a harvest. They smell of earth, of sweat, of desperation. They look at you not as a luxury, but as proof that they lived one night beyond the fields. Their rough hands bruise, their inexperience cuts, their fear of inadequacy makes them demand reassurance you cannot give. They do not return often, they cannot afford it. But their presence is a reminder that the brothel feeds on every layer of society, from the fields to the palaces. And then there are the monks. They arrive in secret, cloaked in hypocrisy, speaking of enlightenment while fumbling with your robes. They whisper sutras in the same breath as they demand things that make your stomach turn. You learn quickly that holiness is not immunity to hunger. In fact, it often seems to make the hunger worse. They leave before dawn, eyes downcast, lips muttering excuses, but their coins are as heavy as any others. What unites them all is the entitlement. They come believing that their coin has purchased not only your body, but your silence, your obedience, your complicity in their fantasies. They treat you as an object, a canvas upon which to paint their power, their lust, their boredom. Some demand roleplay, insist you act as wife, as servant, as enemy to be conquered. Others are too drunk to speak, collapsing onto you like sacks of rice. Still others test the limits, press against the boundaries of what the madam allows, forcing, taking, laughing when you cry out. The brothel punishes you, not them, if they go too far, because the client is always right and you are always wrong, no matter what. And the filthiest truth, many of them are not strangers. Some are neighbours, some are officials who lecture about morality, some are fathers of children you see on the street. They smile at you in public with disdain, then return at night with hunger. The hypocrisy is so thick you could choke on it, but you learn to swallow it down like all the rest. Their cruelty is not always violent. Sometimes it is casual, thoughtless, the kind that seeps into your bones. A merchant complains that you are less lively than last month, as though you were seche gone sour. A samurai laughs that your hands are rougher than his wife's, not realizing, or not caring, that your hands have worked more than his ever will. A townsman compares you to another girl, a younger one, and shakes his head as though you failed an exam you never agreed to take. Each word cuts, each gesture reminds you that you are disposable, interchangeable, a product in a marketplace that never closes. And yet, without them, the brothel does not survive. They are both the disease and the cure, the reason for your suffering and the means of your survival. You despise them, but you depend on them. They despise you, but they return anyway. It is a cycle, endless, nauseating, spinning until you forget which side of it you're on. You tell yourself some nights that they are pathetic, that their power is an illusion, that without their coins they would crumble. You remind yourself that they come here because they cannot find what they want anywhere else, because they are broken in ways society allows them to hide. It helps, a little, but not enough. Because at the end of the night, no matter who they were, samurai, merchant, farmer, monk, they all leave, and you remain. You wake not because you are rested, but because the rules say you must. The brothel has its own clock, a rhythm not of sunrise and sunset, but of customers and coins. The day begins long before the doors open. You rise stiff from your futon, your hair heavy with oil, your body aching from the night before, and already the madam's voice is cutting through the hall like a blade, calling names, demanding obedience. There is no lingering, no pause. You move, because not moving means punishment, and punishment here is never gentle. The first ritual is appearance. You sit cross-legged while the younger girls bring the powders, the combs, the pins. Hours vanish into the creation of a mask, layer upon layer of paint and perfume, while your real face, your tired, scarred, weary face, fades further away. The madam inspects each of you with the sharp eye of a merchant inspecting goods. If your eyeliner is crooked, if your kimono is wrinkled, if your lips are not red enough, you are struck or fined or both. Beauty here is not personal, it is policy. Meals are quick, functional, eaten in silence. Rice, miso, sometimes pickles if the brothel is generous that week. You eat what you're given, grateful for any food at all, but you never forget the irony. The clients feast while you subsist on scraps. If you complain, you are reminded that you are lucky to eat at all. The younger ones learn quickly not to whine. Hunger is easier to bear than the sting of the bamboo rod. The day hours are for training and chores. New girls are drilled in dance, song, etiquette. They bow until their backs ache, smile until their lips tremble, practice tea service until their hands shake. They are corrected with slaps, with shouts, with hours of repetition. The older girls scrub floors, wash robes, heat water, clean futons. The brothel has no servants for these tasks. You are both the product and the labor force. Even when you are exhausted, you work because the house demands it. The rules are endless. You may not speak out of turn. You may not look a client in the eye unless instructed. You may not leave the brothel without permission. You may not refuse a man, no matter how filthy, no matter how cruel. You may not keep money for yourself. You may not show anger or boredom or disgust. You may not fall in love. If you break these rules, the punishments are swift. Beatings, isolation, docking of food, shaving of hair to humiliate you. Some are locked in small rooms for days, emerging pale and silent, their eyes dimmer than before. Others are forced to work without rest until they collapse. The message is clear. Obedience is survival. Disobedience is annihilation. At night, the house transforms. Lanterns glow, musicians play, the air fills with sake and smoke. You are paraded like ornaments, lined up for inspection, smiling with mouths that taste of bitterness. The madam introduces you to clients, praising your beauty, your grace, your wit. Words rehearsed 1,000 times, spoken not for truth, but for sales. Men point, choose, laugh. You bow, hide the dread that gnaws at your stomach, and follow them to rooms where the masks slip, but only theirs. Yours must stay fixed until morning. The brothel is loud, but the silence beneath it is louder. Girls do not talk of what they endure, not to each other, not to anyone. You learn to guard your words, to lock your feelings behind smiles, because anything you reveal can be used against you. The madam listens. The older girls report, "Trust is a currency rarer than gold here, and most cannot afford it." Friendships are dangerous, alliances are temporary. Today, someone may comfort you. Tomorrow, they may betray you for a chance at the madam's favor. You notice how the house itself enforces obedience. The walls are thin, carrying every sound. You hear the cries from other rooms, the beatings, the forced laughter. Privacy does not exist. You are always watched, always measured. Even your sleep is borrowed, taken in short bursts between clients, interrupted whenever the house decides you are needed again. Dreams fade quickly when your nights are broken by fists on sliding doors. The hierarchy within the brothel is its own cage. The Oiran, the top courtesans, are praised and envied, but their lives are no freer than yours. They wear the heaviest robes, the tallest hair, the brightest paint, and beneath it all, they are just as tired, just as trapped. They pretend superiority, scolding younger girls, enforcing rules, but you see the fear in their eyes. They know that when their beauty fades, they will fall, and the house will not catch them. Beneath them, the lower-ranked women struggle for scraps, desperate to climb, desperate to survive. Rivalries fester. Competition is constant. Unity is impossible. Even laughter is regulated. When clients demand it, you laugh, even when your ribs ache. When clients are gone, you remain silent, because joy without profit is forbidden. If you are caught joking, singing for yourself, dancing without an audience, you are punished. The house owns your body, your voice, even your laughter. And so the days blur. Chores, paint, rules, clients, punishments. You forget the sound of your own unguarded voice. You forget what it feels like to move without someone watching. You forget that once, long ago, you were not property. The brothel teaches you to erase yourself, to become a shadow that exists only to serve, to smile when commanded, to vanish when ordered. But deep down, in the moments between, when the lanterns are out and the madam is sleeping, you remember. You remember the girl you were before, the name you had before, the dreams you whispered before. The house has not killed her, not yet. She lingers, a small ember smouldering beneath the ash. And maybe, just maybe, she will burn again. To the outside world, you are not a prisoner. You are a spectacle. People crowd the narrow streets just to catch a glimpse of you, painted and draped in fabrics worth more than their families will ever touch. Children point, men bow slightly, women whisper behind their sleeves. They call you Oiran, a title heavy with silk and perfume, a name that sounds grand in their mouths because they cannot see the price you paid for it. They see only the mask, the parade, the illusion carefully crafted to hide the rot. On festival days, or when wealthy patrons come calling, you are dressed in layers so heavy you can barely walk. The kimono alone weighs as much as a child, embroidered with gold thread, dyed in colours forbidden to anyone but the highest courtesans. The obi belt wraps around you like a shackle, cinching your ribs until you cannot breathe deeply. Your hair is a tower of lacquer and pins, so intricate it requires servants to build it, so stiff you cannot rest your head properly at night. When you step into the street, men marvel. When you step back inside, your scalp burns, your spine aches, and your lungs beg for air. The Oiran Doshu, the courtesan's procession, is the greatest theatre of all. You lead a parade through the red light district, your robes sweeping the ground, your towering shoes forcing you to take slow, deliberate steps that make you appear regal, but leave your legs trembling with effort. Behind you, trail attendants, musicians, apprentices, all arranged like props in a play. Crowds gather, gasping at your beauty, your poise, your otherworldly aura. They think you are a queen of pleasure. You know you are a commodity, paraded like cattle at market, displayed to remind the world of the house's wealth and power. Inside the brothel, the illusion continues. Patrons are greeted with sliding doors, polished floors, lantern lights soft enough to hide imperfections. Rooms are decorated with painted screens, silk cushions, incense burning to mask the stale air. They are made to feel as if they are entering paradise. You play your part, kneeling gracefully, pouring tea with practiced hands, reciting poems you memorized, not for love of words, but because the house demanded it. Every gesture is calculated, every smile rehearsed. The illusion is seamless, until the doors close and the real work begins. The rich clients believe the mask more than anyone else. Samurai imagine they are honored guests of a goddess. Merchants imagine they are emperors, buying devotion with coins. They talk about your elegance, your refinement, your artistry, as though these things are natural rather than drilled into you with years of pain. They admire the silk without wondering what hides beneath it, the painted lips without questioning what they have said in silence, the pale skin without noticing the sores the powder conceals. The irony is bitter. The more glamorous you appear, the more invisible you become. No one sees the hunger because the robe is embroidered. No one hears the cough because the flute is playing. No one notices the tears because the rouge is too bright. You vanish behind the performance until even you forget there was ever a self beneath it. But you cannot forget the price. The fabrics leave rashes where they rub against your skin. The lead powder eats your flesh slowly, leaving scars you hide beneath new layers. The towering shoes twist your ankles. The endless bows grind your knees until they ache with every step. You are praised for beauty that destroys you, admired for grace that cripples you, adored for youth that will not last. The public illusion extends even to your status. Outsiders whisper that Oiran live lives of luxury, that they choose their clients, that they dine on delicacies and drink the finest sake. The truth? You eat rice gruel in the kitchen, hiding from the men's laughter. You sleep on a futon stuffed with straw, your body aching from the night's labour. You may refuse a client only if the madame permits it, and she rarely does, because coins speak louder than your pleas. The feasts are for them, not you. The silks are theirs, not yours. The luxury is performance, and you are the stage. And yet, the illusion is powerful. Some girls, new to the house, still believe it when they first don the robes. They see themselves in the mirror and whisper, "I am special. I am chosen. I'm above the others." They strut in their finery, proud of the way men stare. But the years strip that pride away, layer by layer, until they see the robes not as treasures, but as chains. By the time they understand, it is too late. The debts are too high, the years too many, the body too broken. Even death does not fully end the performance. When a courtesan dies, the house buries her with incense, with prayers, with ceremonies meant to assure outsiders that she was honoured. The truth is less poetic. She is replaced quickly, her futon given to another, her name erased from ledgers as easily as a stain wiped from silk. The illusion must remain intact, because if the truth slipped through, if the world saw the corpses beneath the paint, the entire system might crack. And so, you endure. You walk in parades, you wear the robes, you speak the lines. You keep the mask fixed while inside you feel yourself dissolving. And the cruelest part is that the world adores the mask more than it ever could adore the person behind it. In the end, the illusion of luxury is worse than the open misery of poverty. Poverty at least belongs to you. This gilded suffering belongs to everyone else, bought with their coins, sustained by their desire, displayed for their amusement. You are not a woman in finery. You are a mirror, reflecting their fantasies back at them. And when the mirror cracks, they will replace it. You know from the moment you first paint your face white that your story is already written, and it is not a long one. The life of an Oiran does not stretch like the road of a pilgrim. It burns like an oil lamp, bright, trembling, and always hungry for fuel. The house feeds it, the clients feed it, the silks feed it, until there is nothing left to burn but you. And when the flame gutters out, no one bothers to save the smoke. Death in the brothel is rarely sudden. It creeps. It begins with the cough you cannot stop, the blood in your handkerchief, the fever that lingers longer each time. The madam shrugs and tells you to paint over the pallor, to smile wider so the clients don't notice. Or it begins with the pain in your belly, sharp and constant, from the herbs and powders you swallowed to keep from carrying the wrong child. Or it begins in your bones, which ache from the endless kneeling, the weight of silk, the bows repeated until your joints grind together like millstones. You die by inches before you ever lie still. When the end comes, it is not noble. You are not surrounded by friends, you are not honoured by clients, you are not remembered as a goddess of pleasure. You are put aside, like a broken tool, your futon given to another girl before the incense on your altar has burned out. Sometimes they bury you properly, in a cemetery with the others, with a name carved into wood. Sometimes the house cannot be bothered, and you are left in a pauper's grave, your debts following you into the dirt, as if even the worm should be reminded of what you owed. Children born of brothel unions are rarely given memory either. If they live, they are sold, abandoned, or raised in the same walls that destroyed you. Some never make it past infancy. Others survive long enough to become new fuel for the same fire. Few, very few, escape. And even those who do carry the stain, the whispers that follow them through the streets, the reminder that they were born of painted women and drunken men. And yet, there is a kind of memory, though not the one you would wish. Ballads are sung of the Oiran, poems written, woodblock prints sold. They show you as a goddess, serene, radiant, untouchable. They show the robes, the hair, the painted smile. They never show the sores, the coughing fits, the miscarriages, the bruises left by rough hands. The illusion survives better than the woman, and in time the world forgets there was ever a difference. Clients remember you briefly, perhaps with fondness, perhaps with shame. A merchant might mutter your name once in drunken nostalgia. A samurai might boast of having bought your company long after your grave is moss-covered. The house never remembers. It has no use for ghosts. It remembers only the debts, the profits, the new girls waiting to be painted. And yet, despite everything, there is resistance in memory. You remember yourself, even at the end. You remember the girl who once dreamed of anything but this. You remember the laughter stolen from you, the songs you hummed in secret, the moments when you touched another hand, not for coins, but for comfort. These memories survive in you, even if no one else cares to carry them. The cruelest truth, most Oiran did not grow old. Those who somehow endured long enough to leave the brothel, their beauty faded, their debts finally paid or forgiven, found that the world outside had little use for them. Some became seamstresses, working with the same silks that once suffocated them. Some cooked in inns, their hands too worn for elegance. Some returned to their villages, only to find themselves unwelcome, a reminder of shame. Survival was not freedom, it was merely another kind of endurance. The percentage who lived to old age was pitiful. Most were buried before 30, some before 20, their youth devoured by the house, their names forgotten by the city. Those who survived bore scars that never left, their bodies wrecked by poison powders, their wombs destroyed by desperate herbs, their minds haunted by rooms that never let them sleep. And yet, there is one last, bitter victory. You existed. You left marks in ledgers, in poems, in memories whispered by men who could not look at their wives without recalling you. You left children, some lost, some forgotten, some who carried fragments of you into futures you could not imagine. You left ghosts that lingered in painted screens, in incense smoke, in the stories told long after you were gone. The house may forget, the city may forget, but history, with its slow and clumsy hands, sometimes remembers. When the lanterns go out for the last time and your painted face is washed clean in preparation for burial, you return briefly to yourself. The girl you were, the child sold, the body painted, the woman broken, all of them lie together, finally without the weight of silk or the sting of powder. There is no applause, no procession, just silence, long and deep, the kind of silence you wished for every night between clients. And if anyone, centuries later, asks what it was like, if they look at the prints, the poems, the lies, you would tell them this: it was not beauty, it was not luxury, it was not freedom. It was hunger dressed in silk, violence painted white, despair perfumed with incense. It was a life stolen and sold, a fire that burned too quickly, a story that ended too soon. And you would tell them, with the dry humour you learned to keep yourself alive, that the only real luxury an Oiran ever had was the luxury of being forgotten quickly, because memory itself was too cruel to bear.